China encompasses 1/4 of the world's population. It is a field of tremendous opportunity for evangelization, with over 1 billion people who need to hear the saving gospel of Jesus Christ. Yet it has one of the few communist regimes left on earth, an officially atheistic state in which the Roman Catholic Church is illegal. In this episode of the St. Charles Forum, we will learn of the persecution endured by our fellow Catholics in China and of their hopes for the future.
The Eternal Word Television Network presents the St. Charles Forum from St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Welcome to the St. Charles Forum as we discuss the state of the Church in China with two very knowledgeable individuals. We are very pleased to welcome with us today Ms. Nina Shea, the Executive Director of the Puebla Program on Religious Freedom at Freedom House in Washington, D.C. Nina, welcome.
Thank you.
And we also have with us Dr. Joseph Kung, the nephew of the Cardinal Bishop of Shanghai, who is living in the United States. And Joseph Kung is also the president of the Cardinal Kung Foundation in Cromwell, Connecticut. Joseph, welcome.
Thank you.
We're deeply grateful for both of you coming in and discussing the situation with us. Before we get into the state of the Church in China, I'd like to learn a little bit more about, first of all, Freedom House. Nina, can you tell us what Freedom House is?
Well, Freedom House is one of the world's oldest human rights and pro-democracy organizations. We were founded in 1941, 55 years ago, by Eleanor Roosevelt and Wendell Willkie to alert and inform the American public about Nazism and communism in Europe. And we have been working on totalitarian situations and other kinds of dictatorships ever since.
And in particular, you monitor the exercise of religious freedoms, right? Or
I'm the
religious
director of the
persecution.
religious program, and we monitor religious persecution for all groups in all parts of the world. But we have a particular focus on Christian persecution because this is emerging around the world as one of the main human rights problems in the wake of the Cold War now.
Okay, and clearly China is one of the countries that you've monitored.
Yeah, exactly.
Along with many other countries as well.
That's right.
Yes. And Joseph, can you tell us just briefly about the Joseph Kung Foundation and what your task is?
Our foundation is established with a specific purpose to assist the loyal, genuine Roman Catholic Church in China, which has been declared illegal in China and has gone to underground for the last 40-some years. But recently they have all gone above ground right now at this moment. They are the loyal Roman Catholic. We are working for them. We are working directly with the bishops of the underground Roman Catholic Church.
Okay, well, we're going to have to understand a little bit what the underground Catholic Church might be compared to others who call themselves Catholics within China, what the relationship between the two are. But I think it's important, too, that our viewers know a little bit about the situation in China. We don't usually think of China as a Christian country.
No,
how long has the Church been in China?
Well, the Church, 700 years ago, there was a missionary coming over to China, and that was the starting of the Christianity in China. 400 years ago, Father Matteo Ricci came to China, and then we have other missionary coming back.
Father Matteo Ricci came 400 years ago?
402 years ago.
Oh, I see. And where did he come from? What country?
He came from Italy.
He was an Italian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is there a particular region in China where most Catholics are situated?
Well, it's spread all out, but right now at this moment in Hubei province is a stronghold of the Roman Catholic Church over there. And otherwise you have a large concentration in Jiangsu or in Shanghai, in Beijing, in all over, yes. Mm-hmm. We have about 8 million plus Roman Catholics.
Over 8 million?
Regardless of the previous persecutions starting in 1949, the population of the Roman Catholic Church has increased from 3 million to 8 million plus.
Right, that's remarkable.
At this moment, yes, with God's grace.
Yes. Now, in the past, there was well before the 1940s, around the turn of the century, wasn't there something called the Boxer Rebellion?
Yes.
In China?
That's right. So it was quite a severe persecution over there. That we have made a lot of martyrs over there.
But there was a persecution of the church at the time of the Boxer Rebellion as well, around the turn of the century.
Sure,
right?
sure. But it has a different connotation right there, because during the Boxers, because they didn't like foreign missionaries, so that everything foreign is somehow is not good.
So the Boxer Rebellion was against foreign influence generally
Right.
in
general,
China.
yes.
But when did Freedom House turn its sights, if you will, on China? How far ago did it become concerned with the situation there?
Well, we became concerned, of course, during the Mao period and the Cultural Revolution, which was one of the severest periods of persecution. The communist government has persecuted Christians and Catholics since its beginning. In fact, tried to eliminate it completely in the early years.
When did the communist regime come to power in China?
In the late 40s. So that
after the Second World War?
Yeah. So then you have the periods of waxing and waning of persecution. There's always been persecution and discrimination, but really persecution. People being thrown in prison, tortured, even killed for their faith throughout the communist period. But it lessened somewhat after the Cultural Revolution for a short period.
Okay, now you've mentioned the Cultural Revolution a couple of times. That was under the leadership of Mao Zedong.
Yeah,
when
and
he
it
was...
ended that period ended in the mid-70s, late 70s. And so then
So it was an attempt to bring about what kind of really pure communism?
Pure atheist state, where religion would be eradicated. And
there was persecution of far more than even religious believers, right? But of
across the board
intellectuals and
persecution,
everybody.
yes. That's right.
Didn't
And
toe the Maoist line.
that's right. And in fact, there's persecution across the board even today. Freedom House rates China as one of the world's worst abusers of civil and political freedoms. And that's for labor unionists. There's no free labor unions. There's no independent human rights groups. There's no civil liberty groups. There's no independent lawyer groups.
But they
no
must.
free press.
But there must be a greater openness. And wasn't there a United Nations conference that was held there for people from all around the world, not terribly long ago?
In August 1995 and beginning of September, there was the UN Conference on Women, Worldwide Conference on Women in Beijing. And
wouldn't that indicate a growing openness on the part of the Chinese government?
Certainly the Chinese government wanted the world to think it was an open forum, but we saw that it was very closely circumscribed. The attendants were warned, including our State Department, warned Americans going there to leave their Bibles at home. Because
the State Department of the United States
admonished our citizens to leave their Bibles at home because they won't like it over there. And all worship was contained to a spirituality tent. They were not, even though this forum was going on in Beijing, they were not allowed to go into the churches and worship.
So the foreigners who were attending the United Nations conference in Beijing were not able to go to places of worship in the city.
That's right. And the streets were swept of dissidents and people they thought would cause trouble. In fact, we have a database of imprisoned Christians, Catholics, and Protestant evangelicals who are in prison. One of them is a man who was picked up in the weeks before the UN forum because he was a Christian who had previously been arrested for praying without authorization. And to keep him off the streets, to make sure he didn't create a commotion by praying openly, they picked him up. And he was just tried and given a 3-year sentence.
For praying
without authorization. In other words, in China, you must apply for permission from the Religious Affairs Bureau to worship. You must be worshiping with a registered church, with a registered clergyman at a registered place. And if you're not, you can be charged with a counter-revolutionary offense or other crime. And the Religious Affairs Bureau, by the way, is headed by a hardline communist and by an atheist. We know who he is. And the Religious Affairs Bureau itself is ultimately responsible to the Central Committee of the Communist Party in China.
And so the Religious Affairs Committee is headed by an atheist.
An atheist.
Right? I see. Well,
and I want to add something too. During that period of the conference time, most of the bishops of the Roman Catholic Church around the neighborhood of Beijing area, they were all picked up and detained by the communist government. And plus a lot of influential laymen. And I know of 3 girls.
Influential laymen as well?
Layperson, yes. And I know 3 girls coming over from another province, hoping to have a contact with a foreigner, try to air their grievances. They never made it. They were picked up by them before even they had a chance to do anything else. So it was terrible, yes.
Joseph, we notice you have a very slight accent. So you've come from China?
I came from China, that's right. I have a Chinese accent, I guess.
And when did you leave China?
I left China in 1949, end of 1949. As a matter of fact, I arrived in Hong Kong January the 1st, 1950. I remember that very well, New Year's Day.
New Year's Day, 1950.
That's right.
Why did you leave?
Well, many reasons, but one of the most important reasons because my father left China before we did, and he was sick. So I, being the eldest son of the family, came to Hong Kong trying to help him.
He was in Hong Kong?
He was in Hong Kong at that time.
Okay.
But after we came out, the original plan was my mother would bring the other 7 children coming over, but the border was closed.
The border was closed to Hong Kong after you got out?
Yes, that's right.
Well, when do you remember the date, the year that the communists took power
in Shanghai? I remember it's in 1949, the month of June.
Okay, June of 1949. So you were out of China within 6 months.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Did you realize then how bad things were going to become?
Yes, we knew that. We feared that because my uncle was ordained a bishop in 1949, knowing the problem lying ahead. And he still accepts this job as a bishop. So we knew that the communists never meant to be a missionary. So they are atheists. So we understand that problem.
So your uncle was consecrated a bishop after the communists had come to power.
Right. In 1949, he was consecrated originally as the Bishop of Suzhou, which is an outskirts city from Shanghai. It's like a Venice of in Europe. It's all water city and famous. Just like Boston, you have all nice seafood over there.
Oh, good.
But about a year later, he was transferred to Shanghai.
I see.
As a Shanghai bishop, Bishop of Shanghai, yes.
And so he did for a while operate as a bishop under the communist government.
As a matter of fact, he operated as a bishop of Shanghai from 1950 all the way to 1955 September, when he was arrested on the 8th of September in 1955.
So for 5 years, he was able openly to exercise his responsibilities as the Bishop of Shanghai.
That was a very important period of 5 years, because during this 5 years, he was able to train the lay person to take over the diocese in the event that he is arrested.
Oh, so he anticipated that there would be problems.
That's true. Yes,
then.
that's true. Yes.
And he prepared for it.
That's true. He prepared in such a way. He used to smoke and he quit smoking because it would be difficult to smoke in the prisons.
So he was breaking his habit ahead of time. So if he was in prison,
temptation, in a sense, you know.
Oh, sure. That's right. Yeah. Well, this has been a fascinating introduction to our topic, and in the next segment we'll look at some real-life personal stories of Christians and others who have lived in China. We'll be back briefly after this break. Welcome back to the St. Charles Forum as we look at the state of the church in China. And Joseph Kung was just telling us that his uncle, the Bishop of Shanghai, was arrested in 1955, was it?
September the 8th, 1955, yes.
Why? What were the charges? Why was he arrested?
Well, he was charged with a long list of so-called crime, counter-revolutionary, in short.
Counter-revolutionary crimes.
That's right. But in fact, he was arrested because he refused to denounce the authority of the Holy Father. And the communist regime wanted him to lead a movement to separate from the church in Rome. And he said no to them, flat no, so he was in for 30-some years. As a matter of fact, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, but they put him in for 30 years, and then they have come out. Yes.
Your uncle was in prison for 30 years.
Right.
And I don't imagine the prison conditions are very pleasant.
I'm afraid not. One of the projects he wanted to visit is in the United States. He tried to compare the prison in the United States with China, but that was night and day. But his room is no more than a little bit larger than his bed, and there was no bed in his room. It's just a concrete floor. He slept right on the concrete floor. He
slept on the concrete floor.
And one day there was an inspection coming in, so people tried to make a little better face of it. They gave him a piece of wooden plywood, 6 by something, you know. That was the worst thing happened, because they are full of bed bugs.
Oh no!
Inside
the wood was full of bed bugs, so it was worse than before.
Had.
No. Now I'm sure he was not able to celebrate Mass.
No, in 30 years he didn't have a chance to celebrate Mass. In 30 years he didn't have a chance to read the Bible, and the only thing he can do over there is pray by rosary.
Oh.
He said, pray by rosary every day. That's a prayer. You can use your finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pray every day. That's how he does.
Well, that's inspired me to be much more faithful in my own praying of the Rosary, and I'll start praying the Rosary for special intentions for those in these kinds of persecuted situations too.
You know, that situation that Joseph just described is going on today. In fact, it's a little known fact that China has the world's largest Christian gulag. There are more Christians, Catholics, and evangelical Protestants in prison today in China than any other country in the world.
Now, is it because they presume to try to practice their faith without going through, what did you call it, the Ministry of Religious Affairs?
The Religious Affairs Bureau, yes.
Well, why don't they just go through the Religious Affairs Bureau and make sure that everything is being done legally, and then can't they go ahead and practice their faith?
Because they will be monitored for what they say and what they do, and it has to conform to the party dictates, the party line, so that they don't want to do that. And in the case of Catholics, of course, they'd have to renounce their affiliation with the Holy Father. And so by definition, they wouldn't even be Roman Catholic. Roman Catholicism is banned in China. There is the Patriotic Catholic Church that was established by the communist government, ultimately headed by the Communist Party. Is the ultimate responsible force for it.
Now, when was that established?
That was officially established in 1957. They called the church called the Chinese Catholic Patriotic Association.
The Chinese Catholic Patriotic Association.
That was in 1957. Unlike the Roman Catholic Church, which was founded by Christ himself, and the Patriotic Association was founded by the communist government. The Roman Catholic Church was established by Christ 2,000 years ago, but Patriotic Association was established some 40 years ago. The bishops of Roman Catholic Church report to the Holy Father, the Pope, the successor of St. Peter. But the bishops of the Patriotic Association report to the People's Congress. And who gives the authority to People's Congress to authorize a bishop? Nobody knows. And nobody in theology will teach anybody that People's Congress in China has the authority to found a church where they call themselves a Catholic.
And there are important moral doctrines that separate the two. It's interesting because the Chinese were very good about establishing this patriotic church in the sense that they really tried to mimic Roman Catholicism. They took over the churches, they took over the cathedrals, and they even celebrated Mass in Latin long beyond Vatican II because they couldn't follow the Pope, so they kept on going with the Latin. It's very hard to tell them apart, but there are theological differences. An obvious one is the one-child policy. Now, China has a very draconian one-child policy, population control program. And their goal is to cap the population at 0 population growth by the year 2040. And they do this by permitting families to have only one child. And only in a certain year. You have to have your permission for a particular year. You can't just have your one child in any year you'd like.
Do they have an office that oversees this as well? They have a religious affairs office?
They
what is it, a population affairs office or something?
Yes. And then it's implemented within the workplace or at the village level, at the neighborhood level. And those who defy it are subjected to forced abortions And a lot of women try to hide their pregnancy till very late on, and so then shocking things happen because then they are forced to have abortions in their 8th month. And we've had letters across my desk from women attesting to the fact that they injected formaldehyde into her uterus, she gave birth to a live baby, and they buried it alive. Reader's Digest in September 1995 carried a story of a gynecologist who managed to get out and attested to the fact that they would often bury alive unwanted or unregistered babies.
Well, I mean, if you have the Patriotic Catholic Church, and does that necessarily mean that they are betraying the moral principles of the Roman Catholic Church? I mean, isn't it possible that they could, on a one-to-one basis with their people, say, look, abortion is still immoral, contraception is immoral, there are other ways to avoid having children, we can use natural family planning. I understand the Chinese government has invited in people to teach natural family planning in China. Now, natural family planning is permissible in Catholic moral doctrine.
But the official position of the Patriotic Association is that they have to promote the one-child policy, and they cannot object. In fact, the Roman Catholic bishops issued a statement objecting to the abortion and the draconian methods of enforcing the one-child policy, and the Patriotic Association never has. During the 1995 UN Women's Conference, the patriotic bishops offered a statement of their own on women. Never once in that statement did they mention the horrible crimes against women surrounding this one-child policy. Not once has that been officially repudiated by the patriotic priests or bishops.
Okay, it may not have been repudiated by them, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily endorse them or would teach their people that they're all right.
They officially give the appearance of endorsing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the church has endured persecution, as Joseph was saying when we were speaking before the show, since our Lord founded it. And within moral theology, we say that there's an obligation never to deny the faith, but there can be occasions on which we don't profess the faith, because it would lead to an unnecessary persecution, if you will. Isn't it possible that there can be Catholics within China who wouldn't publicly denounce the policies of the government, but who don't agree with them at all and would work quietly and within the structures against those policies?
Yes, what I call the middle of the roaders. Those who in their heart very loyal to the Holy Father, but for many reasons, for reasons of their own political career, for reasons of their profession, for many reasons they don't want to speak out. And they go to Patriotic Association Church for the masses and so forth, and these people, there's quite a number of people there, they call the middle of the roaders. Sometimes they are not as well informed as other people, yes. But when we talk about the Patriotic Association, we have to understand this is the official church in China established by the communist government, all right? And let's see the difference between the Patriotic Association and the Roman Catholic Church. I took a couple examples beforehand. Now, for instance, all the bishops of the Roman Catholic Church are appointed by the Holy Father, but all the bishops of the Patriotic Association is not appointed by the Holy Father. They are appointed by the communist government without the permission of the Holy Father.
Without the permission?
Without the permission of the Holy Father. Now, if you look at the canon law, at a certain stage, it says very clearly those bishops is ordained without the permission from the Holy See is automatically excommunicated.
That's right. Reserved
to the Holy See. All right. We don't know what the actual situation, but at least the Holy See did not say anything otherwise. And
I want to make a little theological distinction here.
Would you please?
Because we can say that a man might be ordained without permission of the Holy Father, so that the ordination would be illicit, it would be illegal, and as you say, depending on the punishment that the Holy See would place on it, could bring about automatic excommunication, which indeed happens with bishops. but they might still have valid orders. Okay, that is that they might be, because there have been even heretical movements which have had bishops who had valid orders, but that they were broken off from the Holy See. So they weren't members then of the Catholic Church and could only be members of the Catholic Church when they were restored.
And one more thing very important, look at the history of the Patriotic Association. Before they called the Patriotic Association, and later on they reorganized, they established their own bishops' conference. They called themselves a Catholic Bishops' Conference. Before they established that particular conference, the Patriotic Association bishop goes around the world. They have to introduce themselves as Patriotic Association bishops. So once you mention the two words Patriotic Association, people know that you are the Communist Church. But after they change their name to Catholic Bishops' Conference, then afterwards they go around the world and introduce themselves as Catholic bishops, Catholic priests, and so forth. So the whole world, the many people got believe that they are really Catholic bishops or Catholic priests coming around the world. Yeah. It's deceiving people. So one has to be very careful to distinguish, is a Catholic bishop, are they really Catholic, belonging to the Roman Catholic Church, reporting to the Holy Father, or they call themselves Catholic as a Patriotic Association bishops, yes, which in effect, they are not Catholic because they do not recognize the supreme authority of the Holy Father. They call themselves Catholic, but they are in effect not Catholic.
Nina? There might be some sincere people in the Patriotic Association, but because there's no quality control, you just don't know who's who.
Well, how do we know who's who then? I mean,
we just don't.
The Patriotic Association, we don't know.
We don't know.
A priest could be, as you said, is valid priest, but not licit.
Yes.
A bishop could be valid bishop, but not licit.
Yeah.
All right. But who knows? There may be other bishops who were ordained bishop by someone who is not licit,
but
neither valid.
Well, the Holy See would know. Well, the Holy See would know which bishop it has approved, or which man it has approved for ordination, and which man it is not. So doesn't the Holy See know?
I wish they know. I wish they knew.
Wasn't there a story about a petition or appeal that was sent by some of the genuine bishops in the Patriotic Association, and saying that they, or some bishops got together and wrote an appeal to Rome and said, we truly believe that you are the authoritative head of the church. And then, and there was something like 12, or correct me, Joseph, how many signatories? And
I don't know the detail of that particular
petition.
petition.
I'm going to ask you to sit back in your chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's just because of the lighting.
Okay. I believe that there are about 20 Patriotic Association bishops petitioned to the Holy Father, claim their loyalty to the Holy Father. As a result of it, the Holy Father has accepted them into the church.
Oh, well,
however, this list of the bishops are top confidential. Nobody knows who they are. Because they are very confidential, almost every Patriotic Association bishop claims they are one of the 20.
I see. Well, we're going to have to break now, and we'll pursue this further when we come back after this break.
The St. Charles Forum will continue in a moment.
Welcome back to the St. Charles Forum as we discuss the state of the church and actually of other religious organizations and movements within China. I have a question. You were saying that there were 20 bishops, or at least the story has been told, that there have been 20 bishops within the Patriotic Association who secretly have gone to the Holy See and pledged their allegiance to the Pope, and he has received them back into communion. But this all has to be done secretly, right?
Yes.
So that there are now almost all the bishops within the Patriotic Association are claiming to be of this group. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now,
especially when the foreign missionary goes to China and try to work with the Patriotic Association bishops, try to give them some money, and they try to find out how loyal they are. Then they try to claim, they say, I'm very loyal to the Holy Father, I'm one of those 20s, and so forth. And they come back to ask me, say, Joe, How do you know that he is really one of those 20s? And I'm the first one to tell them I do not know, because that's a top secret, and they don't know neither. So,
well, I have a question then. Nina, why don't the communists in China, if this is an official atheistic state and they're opposed to religion and they think it's harmful for the people, why do they allow these churches? Why do they even bother with the Patriotic Association? I mean, I understand there are hundreds of seminarians in China, that there are religious sisters, that there are new convents and new schools and churches. Why does the communist government even permit it? Why doesn't the communist government just totally wipe out the church in China and be done with it?
It's a good question. They simply cannot do it, and they know that. They know that the faith will grow, and in fact it is growing. It has one of the fastest growing Christian churches in the world, China does today, despite the repression, despite the fact that many Christians, both Protestant and the Catholic, are underground. There's some estimates that there is anywhere from a total of 30 to 100 million Christians.
My goodness,
we
really?
don't know how many.
Yeah.
It's a small fraction of their population, which is over 1 billion, but it's growing. And they perceive, after all these decades of horrible repression and persecution, the Communist Party, in secret documents that reached the West in 1995, perceived Christianity as the most severe threat to their power.
But they realize that they just simply can't go in and stamp it out, and so they try to use it. Is that it?
That's right.
There are other reasons. They have the Patriotic Association. They have a long-term view. They have a near-term view, and they are
long-term and near-term.
Near-term. The near-term reason they established the Patriotic Association, they want it to replace the Roman Catholic Church. Period. They were not successful. But they're still trying very, very hard, and the persecution has been intensified for the last year and last few months. It's getting worse and worse every day.
It's getting worse again?
Worse, yeah, getting worse again. They have persecution. They arrest the bishops. They arrest the priests, not only in one place. They are arresting bishops and priests across the countries. And in the Easter time, for instance, we all have the fortune to go to Mass, say a prayer of thanksgiving, and offer our prayers and attend the Holy Mass. But in most parts of China, if you belong to the real Roman Catholic Church, you do not have Mass to go to. You are not allowed to go to Mass. For instance, in the Diocese of Shanghai, they were warned that any priest who says Mass with attendance, if they are caught, and the priest will be fined for their money, Renminbi, for $500, and the faithful, the Catholic will fine for $500 per person, and the priest will be fined for 1,000 Renminbi. And if they are caught for the second time or third time, the fine will be doubled. And if they are caught for the fourth time, they will be expelled from the Shanghai to the countryside. Yeah. So many Catholics in Shanghai belonging to the Roman Catholic Church, they are not allowed. They don't have a Mass to go, even in the Easter time.
Joseph brought up an important point, which was the persecution that's taking place right now in 1996. In the winter-spring 1996 is being perceived as the worst period since the pre-Deng period in the late, in the early 1980s.
You're saying it's almost it's beginning to approach as bad as it was under Mao Zedong?
Well, right after Mao.
Right after Mao.
Yeah, right after Mao. We don't know how many Christians or Catholics are in prison right now. We know there's about 4 bishops in prison right now.
That's right.
And we have a database of about 200 clergy in prison altogether. Right now we're under house arrest. It has a completely closed penal system, a closed judicial system, so it's impossible to tell. But to give you some context, some idea, the figures, an American Bible missionary that I was speaking with recently said that in Shanghai now there is an arrest warrant circulating with the names of 3,000 evangelical pastors, an arrest warrant for 3,000. So we know that and at different times, at processions, during Easter time, during feasts of the Blessed Mother, hundreds are picked up at once. And Christians, Catholics who are defying the ban on Roman Catholic processions or Mass, And so it's hard to tell, but we know that there are probably hundreds or thousands in prison at any given time. And it's a revolving door, so that Bishop Su from Hubei province, for example, is in and out of prison every month. And it's and they're doing this. He's very elderly, but he's in his 80s or 70s.
Bishop Su?
Yeah.
No, he's close to 70.
70,
60, late 60s, yes.
Yeah. He's in and out of prison about 4 times, 5 times a year. And
It's a kind of harassment.
it's a harassment, and it's a way of evading Western censure.
Yeah.
It doesn't go through their legal book. They just put them in and out, in and out. If you happen to be a visitor of the government, asking somebody in the Chinese government, say, is there any bishop and a priest in jail? They'll tell you in a flat face, no, there isn't anybody in jail, because it never gone through the court paper. They just grab you and detain you, and if you like
As
it, take you out,
hardline
and
as
so
the
forth.
regime is, they do care about their public image in the West, because they desperately want Western trade and investment. And therefore they have to hide these human rights abuses. And they know that if Western Christians would hear about this, they would be very upset. And it's amazing, because when I talk about this to the public in America, people say to me, it can't be true. We're not reading about it in our newspapers. How can this be? Well, we're not going to be reading about it in our newspapers until we Christians, we Catholics, speak up about it. We're going to have to lead the way, because our political leaders, even our church leaders, are not saying enough. They're silent.
And this is one of the things that Freedom House does, right?
That's right.
It
That's
raises
what we're
its
trying
voice
to do.
on behalf of
Try to
those
get
who are
others to raise
oppressed
their
around
voice,
the world.
yes.
Joseph, let me ask you, is your uncle, who's 95, is that correct? Cardinal Kung, is he still the Bishop of Shanghai?
He is the official Roman Catholic Bishop of Shanghai, yes, very much so. He's the only one, he's the only legitimate one, yes.
But he's currently living in Stamford, Connecticut.
That's correct, yes.
So he can't really administer his diocese.
He has
at all.
his deputy over there, Bishop Joseph Fan, who is the bishop of the Loyal Roman Catholic Church in China. Yes.
But can he operate publicly?
He operates illegally, in a sense, in quotation, because the Roman Catholic Church is not legal over there.
Right.
So, but the government knows where he is and so forth. And he was one of the bishops that was warned during the Easter time that not to say mass.
And he's under constant police surveillance.
Oh, absolutely, yes. He got visits from the public security every so often.
Well, Nina was saying that despite the persecution, the church is growing, and yet if we look at history, the history of the church, we understand this is often the case. There's that old saying that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And there have been martyrs, haven't there, in China?
Oh, absolutely. I want to tell you the story. I think it's about 2 or 3 months before Bishop Forden Xin died.
Oh, yes.
There was an interview on TV telling him that Bishop Xin, you have inspired so many millions of people all over the world, but who inspired you? Was that a pope? And the Bishop Xin replied him, no, it's not a pope. It's not a cardinal. It's not a bishop. It's not even a priest, not a nun. It's an 11-year-old Chinese little girl. Back in 1949 or 1950s, when the communists just came in, there was a church in Beijing area, and they put the priest, they arrested the priest and locked him up in his own house, where the window can look out. He can look out of what's going on in the church. And after they locked the priest up, they went to the church. To the horror of the priest, they opened the tabernacles. And they took the ciborium out. And
were these soldiers?
Those are soldiers. They took the ciborium out
of the tabernacle.
Out of the tabernacle, and they spilled all the holy sacred hosts on the floor. And the priest knows there were 32 holy sacred hosts on the ground. And they walk away. But unknown to them, there was a little girl, 11 years old, kneeling behind the church, watch everything what's going on. And at that night, the little girl sneaked through the police guard, went to the church. And she made a 1-hour holy hour. And after the holy hour, she went up to the sanctuary and kneeled down. At that time, you know that you're not allowed to touch the holy cloth with your hand.
Yes.
So he kneeled down and with his tongue received one Holy Communion right out of the floor. And she did this for every night. On the 32nd night, he went through and received her Holy Communion on the floor, the last host. But unfortunately, he made a noise and woke up the guard. And the guard went over and caught him, caught that girl, caught her, and beat her to death. Oh. Right? The priest looking from his house knows everything what's going on. So Bishop Xing told the audience, here is a little girl who make a holy hour in order to receive our Christ. And we should all make a holy hour to receive our Holy Christ. And she is the one who influenced Bishop Xing to have this holy hour every day and influence the people.
That's a beautiful story. Nina, are you aware of contemporary martyrs?
Absolutely. In the 90s, there have been about 3 bishops alone who have died while in custody. And we have seen pictures of the bodies, and they were covered with marks, bruises. The family wrote an extensive manuscript about the condition of the body of their relative, this bishop, who died in a so-called old age home. These are government detention centers. And again, the government is trying to evade responsibility by not calling them prisons, but that's what they are. They're prisons. And they're held against their will, and they're abused. And 3 bishops died just a few years ago.
And Bishop Peter Joseph Fan, who was the ordinary of Baoding, Diocese of Baoding, which is the strongest area in China. He's been gone to jail for 30-some years, but the last lapse of the jail, he was tortured and he died in prison. In 1989, the underground bishops decided to go above ground. They organized their own bishops' conference in 1989, and after the conference is over, all the bishops went back to where they come from, and either on the way back or shortly after they arrived at their own base, they were all picked up by the government. One by one, all the bishops picked up. All of that, 3 bishops died in the jail. Yeah. I can go on and on and on.
Sure.
Yes.
And now we're going to have to take our break. We'll be back shortly.
We'll return in just a moment.
Welcome back to the St. Charles Forum and our discussion of the Church in China. And it is a period of persecution and suffering for the Roman Catholics in China. But this is not unprecedented, as we were saying before. I mean, if we even look at England, for example, at the time of Henry VIII, these periods can become very confusing because for a while Henry broke from Rome and the bishops went with him. But then Mary came to the throne and they all went back to Rome. And then after Mary lost her head, they were all severed from Rome again. And it becomes a very, very confusing time. And these are confusing times right now in China as well, aren't they? I mean, Nina, you were saying that we can hardly sort out exactly what the Holy See is trying to do right now in Rome to regularize the situation.
That's right. We don't really know which way it's going to go, how it will resolve itself. We do know that there are persecuted Roman Catholics. Those who call themselves Roman Catholic, who openly profess loyalty to the Holy Father as the successor of St. Peter, are terribly persecuted and risk their well-being today.
But I've been told from those who have been in China that even in the Patriotic Association churches, they pray for the Pope.
Anybody and everybody can pray for the Pope. Even the worst kind of people, they can still pray for the Pope, all right?
It means nothing. It means nothing in terms of doctrine and adherence to doctrine.
That's right, but when we say we pray for the Pope, we pledge our allegiance to the Pope. Not only he is the spiritual leader of the Church, but he is the supreme authority administratively, judiciously, and legislatively. But when Patriotic Association pray for the Pope, they only think Holy Father is a spiritual leader and no more than that. and their own
So you're saying they may be praying very sincerely for the Pope as the spiritual leader, but not
for the
with the juridical
supreme authority. Yes,
arrangements of the church as well.
That's right. And excuse me. And this touch upon the question about loyalty. A lot of people, they pledge the loyalty to the Holy Father. When you pledge the loyalty to the Holy Father, as I said, not only spiritual, but also the administrative, supreme authority and so forth.
In terms of jurisdiction.
That's right. It's going to be, it looks like very contradictory. On one hand, they say they pledge loyalty to the Holy Father. On the other hand, they still declare autonomy from the Holy Father. It is contradictory. Because there is an autonomy element in the Constitution of the Patriotic Association, they don't recognize the supreme authority of the Holy Father. They can never call themselves Catholic.
Now, but I heard that in some situations, the Holy Father has appointed a man bishop of a jurisdiction, and then later the government also approved him as bishop of that jurisdiction. So that there may be emerging now in China situations where a bridge can be built between those who are just in the government church, if you will, and those who are true Roman Catholics.
Well, I do not know about this particular example, John, that such a thing happened, because it appears to be contradictory in a sense that how can a bishop on one hand be appointed by the Holy Father, on another hand become the Patriotic Association bishop, while the Patriotic Association has a clear constitution being autonomous from the Holy Father.
The Patriotic Association has a constitution that says that they are autonomous from the Holy Father.
And being a bishop in the Patriotic Association, they are always the officer of the Patriotic Association. As an officer, they have the duty to defend the Constitution of the Patriotic Association. Now, how they can defend the Constitution being autonomous to the Holy Father, in the meantime, they are still appointed by the Holy Father. So I have my doubts.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, I'm sorry.
But we know it's a very delicate situation right now, that the Holy See is working very hard to reestablish its ties of love and service to the Roman Catholics, and reaching beyond them to everyone who professes belief in Christ, who are living right now in China in a very difficult situation. So first of all, we must pray, I'm sure, for the people there. But what would you suggest to our viewers ought to be done on the part of Americans, for example, to help our brothers and sisters in this situation?
I think there are two things that we must do. As you said, we must pray. And I think that every parish in this country should, in the prayer of the faithful, mention the Chinese church every Sunday. I don't know why we don't do that.
I agree with Nina so wholeheartedly. As a matter of fact, we, the foundation, some time ago sent a letter to all the pastors of the church in tri-state area, that means in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey area, requesting them in their prayer of intercession, insert praying for China. Yes.
We must pray as a church for the church in China. Also, we must, as Catholics, write to our president. For the president to sensitize his State Department, his immigration service, and every member of his government that the churches in China, the Christian churches, are persecuted, and that this should be carried over into our foreign policy. That every time there's a bilateral meeting between a cabinet member and a counterpart in China, they should be raising cases. Cases of Bishop Thomas Zheng, for example, who is in prison today in China for refusing to repudiate the Pope. And he contracted pneumonia. He's an elderly man in his 70s. He's dying in prison today. Bishop Peter Lee, 76-year-old bishop, was in prison last fall. He had stomach cancer, was taken from the hospital to be thrown in prison for refusing to repudiate the Pope.
Now, I'm sorry, but do they walk in and say, we want you to sign the statement that says you repudiate the Pope? Or, I mean, why would they drag him out of a hospital even and throw him in prison?
Because he doesn't sign up with the Patriotic Association.
As a matter of fact, there is a campaign going on right now at this moment, in this very moment, a concerted effort in Hubei. They want all the underground church faithful to sign a piece of paper to go to Patriotic Association Church. Without doing this, you either lose your job or you have very hard time in the future. In order to prevent the school children going to underground mass on Sunday, a number of school districts in Hubei area, they declare Sunday as a school day. They declare Wednesday as a rest day.
Yeah.
But I just want to give you some examples of what, how our foreign policy is failing Christians in China. For example, there was the Golden Venture ship that were smuggling Chinese to the United States, and they were all in prison awaiting deportation. And Congressman Chris Smith, the head of the Human Rights Subcommittee of the House Foreign Affairs Committee in Congress, had a hearing with some of the women, Christian women, that were part of the Golden Venture group. And these women were escaping China because of the one-child policy. Their Christian beliefs rejected the forced sterilization that they were to undergo, and they wanted to leave. And they are going to be deported. They were denied political asylum. And fortunately, the Vatican has found a safe haven for them in another Latin American country.
We won't take them in.
Not only won't we take them in, but they are kept in chains in a prison in York, Pennsylvania. There's another example. I met with Ambassador Jim Sasser a few days before he left for his post in Beijing last January 1996. And he had never heard of the underground church movement in China, did not know it.
And he was going to be our ambassador.
He was going to leave to be our ambassador in a few days. He had heard of the Tibetan Buddhist situation. He had heard of other victims of Chinese oppression. He was well briefed on all those cases, but he knew virtually nothing about the Christian situation in China.
Well, thank you, Nina, because you let him know, didn't you?
Oh, that's great. What I want to say is we have more than 50 seminarians from the Patriotic Association studying in the United States. They all came from China. But when we want to bring somebody over from China, I mean the underground church want to bring somebody over from China, sponsored by us, and his visa is refused. And we do not understand the reason for it. Nina knows about it.
Yeah. So again, the immigration service should really be sensitized to the situation of the churches in China.
But our hearts have to go out also to, I'm sure many sincere, believing Christians who are also in the Patriotic Association, and for whatever reason are not able to fully acknowledge their union with Rome because of the situation.
That's right. They're being denied their religious freedom too, in a way.
Yes, that's right. And so there must be a way that that we can reach out to them as well. I mean, I'm sure many of them have been baptized in the name of the Trinity, profess Jesus Christ as Lord, don't acknowledge the Pope as the supreme head of the Church.
I don't begrudge them an education in the United States. In fact, I think it probably is to the good that they do receive good foundation in theology in the United States. But I think what Joseph is saying, and I agree wholeheartedly, is let's bring some of the those in the persecuted church, the Roman Catholic Church, over here as well to study.
That's true, yes. We very much would like to, but we have difficulty time.
But is that so much a problem on the part of the United States as on the part of China? I mean,
no, it's not.
We would welcome them, would we not?
No, not part of China. They have the passport. They have all the paperwork done. The only thing, they cannot come to the United States because the American consulate refused to sign the visa.
Yeah.
May I be shocked? Because I am. I mean,
Well, they say that, well, they're single men, they don't have jobs, they don't have family, they don't have houses. There's no indication that they will return to China.
Same situation of those seminarians coming from Patriotic Association. They're also single, they don't have a job, blah, blah, blah. But they were all allowed right here.
But that's because it's known that they are seminarians.
Well, there has to be something to work
because
on.
they are known as the seminarians from the Patriotic Association, which is open. But being a seminarian in the underground church, it means underground. You cannot tell them I'm an underground seminarian.
So there must be a special avenue or measure set aside to accommodate this.
So I mean, in a sense, there's a way in which you can't blame the American consul either, or the consulate, because they don't know that these men are actually...
They've been told. Go ahead.
Janet Reno gave a directive to immigration across the country.
Our Attorney General. To be sensitive to victims of spousal abuse. These are new categories of asylum applicants coming in. She could give a similar directive to immigration officers and to consulate officers around the world, in China, saying,
be sensitive to this issue, get an affidavit from a local bishop in China, which this particular seminarian that I think you're talking about had.
Oh, But again, we haven't done. So are things that can be done.
There are things that
and
can
of course,
be done.
I mean, if I can just tell a brief story, I was at a church one time in Washington, and during the intercessions, I had prayed out loud for our brothers and sisters suffering under communist and other totalitarian oppression. And a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes afterwards and said, nobody, she said, I come from Cuba, I've escaped communism there, and she said, no one prays for us, and at the very least we can do that. And we don't have much time. I want to thank you, but I want to conclude with the words.
Can I say one more word? That we not
Yes.
only have to pray for the persecuted church, we have to pray for the people in the Patriotic Association, in the hope that they'll come back to the mother church one of these days.
Oh yes, we'll pray for all Christians, in
right.
China.
Yeah.
And our Holy Father calls us to pray and asks that that unity springs from conversion of the heart. This was a message that the Holy Father sent to China when he was in the Philippines in World Youth Day. Unity springs from conversion of the heart and from sincere acceptance of the unchanging principles laid down by Christ for his church. Particularly important among these principles is the effective communion of all the parts of the church with her visible foundation, Peter the Rock, which of course is the Pope. So pray for all the Christians in China. Thank you for being with us. And watch the credits after the program, because we will have the names and addresses of both Freedom House and the Cardinal Kung Foundation. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.